The greatest leaders in business look for the emerging stories in their organization and use the data to choose their preferred outcome. What outcome do you want in your business? Listen to the stories of industry veterans, coaches, and consultants so you can choose your preferred business outcome. Hi, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Business Blind Spots Exposed. You know, when I picked that name, I thought it was a really smart name, but then I realized, gosh, that's a really long name. So I call it BBSE for short. But let me tell you sort of the seed or the germination for why I call it Business Blind Spots Exposed. You know, if I look in terms of my eyes, I can only see this much in front of me, and what is behind me, I can't actually see. And I need the perspectives of others in order to be able to see that. As I've started to become a little more mature and experienced as an individual, as a human, as a leader, I can't always see what's behind me. I need the experience of others, the perspectives of others to get better. So Business Blind Spots Exposed is me reaching out to a community of experts to find out, what do they see? What is their perspective? Because it might be a blind spot for me, maybe for you as well. But hear from experts who've got a perspective that can increase your level of competency and effectiveness as a person. So today, I want to introduce someone I'm really excited about having on my show, Ramona Shaw. Ramona, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you. How are you?
I am doing super. I'm doing super. I'm really excited about this topic because I feel like 20 years ago, I wish I'd had this conversation with you.
Same here.
The name of the topic, for anyone who hasn't joined us before, if you haven't joined us before, feel free to leave comments, ask questions. I'll forward them on to Ramona or answer them as best I can in the future or whenever you happen to get a chance to see this. But the title for today's topic is The Mindset Shift from Employee to Leader. And I want to give a quick snapshot of the way I've thought about it, the model someone gave me. And Ramona, I just told you about this beforehand. If you think about this triangle and you kind of start at the bottom of that triangle and you start to move hierarchically up through an organization, your technical competency matters a lot at the beginning, your ability to do specific tasks. But as you become a leader and you start to move up that triangle or that organization, it's less about technical competency and more about personality. Ramona, does that resonate with you at all? How does that kind of sit with you? I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, 100%. And I also like to see things in charts. I think this is the analytical mindset here. The chart that I have, and it's also in my book, is about, like, I actually have two arrows, one going up and one going down. So while at the beginning, over the time horizon, so X being time, and if you think about moving from an IC role throughout that time, then at some point, this is the inflection point where you are promoted into your first leadership role, or you start your own business and start hiring people and you build a team. At that point, your technical skills will actually be less relevant compared to your people skills. So the two arrows, they cross each other. One goes down, one goes up. In the beginning, yes, technical skills are very important. Over time, they actually become less relevant, and your people skills are so much more, contributing so much more in terms of your ability to execute, to influence, and to achieve your results.
So I like that image as well. I think I might have to draw that and show it to my kids because I love sharing this stuff with my kids. They're fantastic sounding boards for asking me questions that I would not have necessarily thought
of. My video, yes.
But I do want to give you a little bit of background on Ramona. I've known Ramona, we met online, and it's probably been a year and a half, at least that now.
Yeah.
But I want to give you a little bit about Ramona and her bio. So I'm going to read a little bit here, and I'm going to summarize a little bit, but I want to give you some of the key points. She's a certified professional leadership coach, podcast host, and a best-selling author. I recently released this book, The Confident and Competent New Manager, How to Rapidly Rise to Success in Your First Leadership Role. I got to tell you, I think that's the book I wish I had 20 years ago. Passionate about helping new and mid-level managers become leaders, love to work for and strengthening the leaders and their communication skills, raising their confidence and resilience. And I want to kind of dig a little bit more into that, because I think part of this shift is how you also increase those levels of confidence. Master's degree in finance, but you entered the field of private equity and ultimately started to lead strategic projects of international teams as well as other teams as a VP of client services and for a renowned global private equity firm. But now you just focus specifically on organizations and helping their mid-level managers. I'm going to put this into my own words, kind of come into their own. Is that a fair way to say that?
I don't know if I would say come into their own. And so if I think about new and mid-level managers, and that actually applies to all leaders across the ranks here. But the people that I speak with most often, or day in and day out, are those new and mid-level managers, and they are or company founders who are starting to build teams and gradually moving sort of from 5, 10 to 20 to 50. This is a growth journey. There's no end to it. So even if you found yourself or you feel like I'm in my flow, I am figuring this out, chances are really high that there's a curveball coming your way. Or a blind spot exposed, right? There's something else coming, landing on your desk, or someone quitting or leaving, or some kind of drama, or a pandemic that you didn't expect, whatever that may be, that will continue to challenge you in new ways. So I think we're not really reaching an end point. This is all a journey to be on, but it takes intentionality to really, really optimize that ride, or meet that potential, right? And really elevate, not get in your own way. And I think a lot of leaders stand in their own way and make themselves be stuck in their roles without noticing it and not being able to accelerate. So
I realize this is probably the second reference I've made to my kids already in like 5-7 minutes here. But, I give my kids an example, and I talk about this idea that perfection is a journey. It's not actually a destination. Mm-hmm. I talk about this idea. I used to play a lot of soccer. So the soccer skills that I needed to learn, how many times I need to be able to juggle the ball 50 times, and I need to be able to, do whatever else, run a certain distance at a certain speed. What I needed to achieve as a 12-year-old was perfect for a 12-year-old, but was the beginning stages for becoming a 13-year-old soccer player. Right?
Yeah.
And
so
from 13, 14, so on and so forth. And I think that's sort of synonymous with what you're saying here, as far as that leadership journey. It's not just getting to 12-year-old soccer and saying, I'm done. Mm-hmm. There's more. Is that about right?
Yeah, totally. And I would actually say, in addition to that, not only are you growing and you need to do more, but it's also getting more and more selective. So the further up that you go, right? So if there's a team of 5, one of them is going to be promoted into the next leadership role. And so you're playing at a bigger stage, and you are competing, or compared to, maybe it's better than competing, to all the other leaders who got promoted. Right. And no longer is the way that you showed up as an IC is no longer sufficient to stand out and to be impactful and to be a role model and inspiring leader in your first leadership role. Same with running a business. I'm experiencing this right now, where I start building my team or growing my team, and I realize, the way that I did things really well as, my being on my own really don't work anymore. Once you bring people on, I'm going like, oh my gosh, I'm back into this, like living through it again. And it just is, it's amazing, because it's a catalyst for growth. I think it's really fabulous, but we have to be on it. We can't let that take a passive stance here.
So I read the stat, I think that you just sent across my direction, that 60% of new managers underperform in their first 2 years. Why is that? Why does that occur?
Yeah, which is really sad. If you think about it, you get promoted, right? You think, oh, this is going to be amazing. And then chances are the odds are actually stacked against you. I think a big part of this is not understanding that this is such a big shift. I say, and I strongly believe that for most people, transitioning from an IC into their first leadership role is the biggest shift in their careers, because it's such a dramatic shift in not just the skill set they need to apply, but also the mindset on how they need to look at work. It was all about themselves up until that point. And now it's no longer about themselves. It was all about them expanding their expertise, becoming the go-to person, having the answers. And as a leader, those things won't work. They used to work a few decades ago. They no longer work. And it's such a big shift. And most managers are not prepared. And I wouldn't even say it's their manager's fault. It's usually sort of the organizational setting where people just thrusting them into these roles or throwing them into these roles and not providing them with the support and the mentoring and the training they need in order to be set up for success.
And by the way, you've used the term IC twice. I'm assuming individual contributors.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying.
Yeah. Well, so this is really interesting because I will tell you, I talk often about the dark nights of the soul, and I will say sometimes I take solace in the fact that maybe I could just go back to being an engineer again, because that's what I started out. Because I very rarely lost sleep in the middle of the night because of an engineering issue, because I never had dark nights of the soul. But now as a leader and having numbers of people that partners and customers, investors, all these different things, gosh, there are many, many dark nights of the soul, and they're not technical problems, competency problems.
Yeah.
Very, very often. Is that resonate with you as well?
Yeah, 100%. And it's also right now we're looking at situations and statistics from Gallup that says one out of 3 manager is feeling burnt out or exhausted. And that is new. Like, we've heard those things and the disengagement about employees, but managers always sort of held that steady ground. But that has changed. And a lot of this burnout and exhaustion comes from people problems. It doesn't come from the technical problems. It comes from not knowing how to provide results and deliver those that they need to, and they get the pressure from upwards, but also being that kind of people first person and listening to people's problems and supporting them. And it's this feeling like in that sandwich of trying to figure out how do I show up for my people, and do I help them and give feedback, and I make this all work while also delivering on the results that I need to. And then a lot of managers will step in and will say, well, then I'll just do it. That's easier. And so they'll accept, the 80% kind of quality of work, or they accept navigating or dealing with the team members not really carrying their full load. And they'll just, bridge the gap to meet targets and deadlines and so forth. And that is not a sustainable solution.
So I feel like we started to paint a picture a little bit of what that transition starts to look like.
Mm-hmm.
But give me some nuggets, right? 2 to 3 things that are markers or things that someone making that transition to that new leadership role or to that management. What are the 3 things, maybe 2 or 3 things that they should start to look for, that this is starting to happen and I haven't made that shift, or I've started to make that shift?
Yeah, totally. So, and by the way, we also talked about why is it that so many fail, right? Mm-hmm. And in organizations, and I don't want to assign any blame. I just like, these are observations, and I think we can all do better as leaders, new managers, to really recognize, hey, this is a big responsibility. Leadership isn't a privilege, and I think really embracing that idea. I, as a leader, work for my team, and it's a responsibility, and my voice is actually having a ripple effect on other people. Really embracing that aspect, becoming aware of it, and then doing the work. If you grow as a leader, everyone will grow. If you stagnate and you're applying ineffective habits, everyone on the team will suffer, not just the company, really the people on the team. And so I'd say, like, in the so it comes from that awareness on all levels across the organization, from HR to managers to business owners to the actual person who gets promoted. And everyone needs to support the transition and give that person feedback and be aware of and mentoring and be aware of some of these common blind spots. One of them, so very specifically or tactically, one of them is when managers think that they need to have the answers. Mm-hmm. And I totally get it, right? I was that way too. I was like, I got promoted, I guess, because I've been here the longest, or because I have, the broadest level of experience here on what we're doing on the team. And so therefore, it is expected that I have the answer. And if I don't have the answer, I might go research. I might say, like, I'm not sure, but I'm going to find out for you. But that mindset is one that will not scale. Yeah. And it's disempowering for the team member. Again, something that used to work, not working anymore. So really shifting into, no, I'm here to facilitate the conversations. I'm here to offer resources, to help them, to challenge my team members to figure it out, to be a partner, a thought partner, the coach, on next to them. And if I do have expertise, not to say that I shouldn't ever share my expertise or and to support my employees that way, but not as a first go-to reaction.
Yeah. So I love this. I mean, the thought that comes into mind, which kind of just reflecting on my own experience, it's almost as though the leader, you not only do you not have to have the answers, it's almost investigating the places where there are not answers and bringing that to light and say, who can solve this, right?
Yeah.
And that's actually what you're spent to be doing. Hey, there's a blind spot over here.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody know what we're looking at, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just being the one who kind of, I'm thinking Lion King, holding the baby, holding the baby Simba up on, over top of the cliff, right?
Yeah.
That's what the leader does. You're the monkey holding the lion up on top of the cliff.
Totally. Yeah.
So give me a second one.
So a second one would be the idea that, and again, also guilty of charge here, the idea that the way that I lead or the way that I like to be led is the way everyone else wants to be led. Mm-hmm. And this is a sneaky one. I sometimes hear people say things such as, well, I'm really a strong believer in autonomy. So I give a lot of autonomy to everyone on my team. Sounds so good, right? Sounds like, yeah, spot on. We all love autonomy, but it's a sneaky one because the problem here is that I make a really good guess here that the person who said that loves autonomy. They love being led with a high degree of autonomy. They thrive in this environment. The big pitfall here, the blind spot is that you think and assume that everyone else loves autonomy too. But that is likely not the case until you have a very homogeneous team, right? But if you have a diverse team on all different levels of diversity, there's a really good chance that someone does not thrive in an environment where they don't get enough direction and clarity on a roadmap or specific step-by-step sort of processes or protocols or frameworks. And that having that clarity and having that the dialogue with you to always know where they're going to go and to check in with you, that is the environment they're going to thrive. And so making the assumption that the way that you like to be led or the way that you're doing things is the way that everyone else sees the world, prefers to be led, likes to do work, makes decisions, is it's a big issue. And so if that is not there and you're not actually shifting not just the mindset, but also the behaviors in how you communicate and what you do that reflect that idea that, this is not my way. I have to adapt. And that makes a big difference in someone's leadership.
So I'm going to play that back to the way I heard that. And I will tell you, first of all, that all the things that you're saying, I will definitely say, I'll be the first in line to admit they've all happened to me as well and continue to happen to me. Mm-hmm. But I'm just making a very simplistic analogy here. I'm a triangle. I speak triangle naturally. And in my team, there's probably 2, maybe 3 triangles out of 8. Everyone else has circles, squares, stars, whatever else. And if I continue to always assume that triangle is the only way to speak, those circles, stars, and squares will really never quite fully engage and understand deeply what I'm trying to say, because that's not the language they speak. Is that a fair way to say that?
Yeah. And they may feel confused, lost, like they're not really seen. They can't really contribute. I have a very clear, memory of a situation where someone on my team came and said, like, hey, we're doing this process a little unstructured. And I thought about a better methodology to figure out, to make these assignments. And in my head, I thought, that doesn't make sense. Like, it's that any framework or methodology here is not going to get us a better result. It's not going to get us there faster either, which is how my brain works. So I shut down the idea. I was like, okay, thanks for doing the work. But in my head, I was like, that was a waste of time, right? It didn't contribute. It didn't have any value. I completely missed the point that me making these random assignments just for the sake of being fast and getting it done was annoying to him. He felt it wasn't fair. It wasn't predictable. It was confusing. And he struggled. And if I had seen, oh my gosh, he's bringing an aspect to the team that I'm not seeing. And just because it doesn't matter to me, doesn't mean it doesn't matter for the rest of the team. So him speaking square and bringing square ideas to the team would make us a stronger team.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
That's interesting.
And we probably needed that framework. We really did.
Yeah. No, I tell my kids all the time this story. I said I could be the smartest person in the world, but if I'm standing in a valley, the person who's standing on the top of the mountain knows it's raining before I do, right? And the punchline there for my kids is perspective matters more than intelligence does. And I think that's kind of what I'm hearing here is, look, that square in this case, I'm triangle. They see something in a way that I don't see that is a value add to the team. Don't just out of hand just mark it off and saying that you're not understanding what I'm saying. They may just see it a completely different way, right?
Yeah, and actually get curious and think like, yeah, even if it doesn't, if I don't think this would add value, but maybe this does add value to the rest of the team, if not even just for that person. Like they would have felt a lot more engaged and committed to the work if they felt like there was a fair process in assigning tasks. There was a method that was predictable. They would have felt so much more chop choy than like dealing with my randomness.
Yeah. Now, do you believe this is, do you believe that this applies to any particular industry, level of education, level of certification? Does that make a difference in all of what you're saying here? I've gotten 2 points from you so far, but even just those two, does education level, background, does that make a difference?
None of it. No, none of it. Because we're all in the business of people. As leaders, you're mainly, before anything else, you're in the business of people. And we're somewhat complicated, but not that dissimilar. So these are all the same patterns, and which is why these traps, these blind spots for new managers are so common. And I speak with so many new managers every week, and it's there are nuances to things, and there are a few outliers, but the vast majority are the same common pitfalls or the same common mistakes or misconceptions that keep coming up.
So I've gotten, don't need to have all the answers as managers, right? People lead the way they like to be led. So consider other ways, other nuggets that you might drop out there.
Yeah, I think one is, and I'm trying to make this really tactical and relatable. I think one is the idea of delegating. Whenever we think that we need to finish it, or we need to own it, or we need to control it, the more control we think we need to have, the less we're able to delegate. We're going to be less tolerant to different approaches. We're going to enforce a level of accountability that's very top-down driven versus what I call sort of like the crowdsourced accountability, so encouraging accountability on the team as a value. But otherwise, it's very much like, I set the deadline, you update me by then, here's how it's going to look, and if it doesn't look that way, then I'm going to take it on and finish it up. And there's this Jonathan Raymond from as an executive coach also, he uses this framework of being a superhero versus being a Yoda. So the superhero would always go in and sort of rescue the situation, right? Own it. But then the problem with this is sometimes very much needed, but sometimes, and often, actually always, when a superhero moves into action, there is a victim somewhere. And it's a very subtle, indirect, often unconscious message that we send of thinking, well, I didn't quite trust that you could figure this out on your own, or didn't quite trust that you could finish it up, so I took it on. And that is the opposite of having a high trust, being a high trust leader. It's the opposite of instilling confidence in others.
So I don't know if I'm 100% on what I wrote here, but I'm always trying to distill what I'm hearing and simplify in my own language. And I wrote down this idea, and I don't know if it's 100%. Delegating is the opposite of control. It's more about influencing, right? You're trying to influence outcomes as opposed to control outcomes, because you're trying to push that mantle of responsibility and ownership to somebody else, as opposed to you taking on that ownership of that mantle.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah, totally. Totally. And by the way, I've been in this, if I've been there, right? And we're both doing it too. Sometimes this is really easy said, but really hard to do. And sometimes we also just can't. I'm not saying you should never control or never dictate or never finish things up. But if that is your go-to and that's how you run your team, there's probably a high chance that people will over time feel disengaged, not really feel like they're contributing that much with their own strength, and they feel like it has to be your way or no way. There is one way to do it, and that's the boss's way.
So even as I get older, I still tend to go back to what I call my elegant child, which is I love stories. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
Ramona, tell me some stories. Tell me kind of like a before and after, right? Before, what was sort of the situation in a company or for a leader? You came and talked to them. You kind of maybe took them through these three nuggets and some other learnings or experiences. And where did they end up? What did that look like?
Yeah. So let me think of a situation where that would uh let me think of a good story. Yeah, so I'm thinking of a sales leader here. This sales leader very much operated with this mindset of I I'm running the team because I'm really good in sales.
Okay.
And I have a method on how to do this, and I have a process. I also have the tools, and here's how we're going to go about it. Now, sales teams usually are pretty actually homogeneous because they're all in the business of sales. If you have a marketing team, they're usually a lot more diverse because there's a creative person and then there's a more analytical person, right? But sales teams are usually a little bit more aligned. Nevertheless, though, this person was constantly feeling like they're the drill sergeant.
Hmm.
And every situation coming their way was like shooting from the hips, like trying to figure out how to do this. But hey, what worked for me is going to work for them. And so I got to figure out when did I encounter this situation and how did I deal with it? And here you go. This is the playbook on how you're going to solve this problem. And it felt like the more that they tried to help the team and solve their problems, the more the team came to him trying to get the answers and for him to solve the problems. As a result, he came to me and he said, one of the things I'm struggling with is really time management because I can't figure out how I take care of my, big accounts and relationships and how I can participate in the bigger leadership conversations and strategic efforts because I'm constantly sucked into all these problems with the people on my team. And so the superficial thought here or a problem, what seemed to be the wound is, oh, this is a time management problem. Then let me look at your calendar. But that's backwards. Instead, we look at why is it that you're spending so much time helping everyone else? Let's look at what are the patterns that even create that. And it took us for us a while to figure out what are actually his new principles. Like, how does he want to lead? What are his leadership principles? One of them is I trust that they know an answer. They have ideas that I don't have yet, or things that I don't know yet, or the things that they could execute better than they could execute my own plan. And so it's a shift in how he wanted to lead. He came up with these different ideas, the different scenarios. He prepared ahead of time and how he's going to respond to the common requests coming his way. He's defined when he's going to be available, and he gave people a heads up on the days or the hours he's not going to be available to also set them up for success. So they didn't feel like, oh my gosh, this is a shock to the system. Where did my boss go? And why is he showing up so differently? So he helped them see that he's trying to make some changes that will be win-wins for them and for him. And then it took about 2 weeks for the team to still push and like, see, is he going to budge? Is he still going to answer? Is he still going to tell me what to do? Because that's the easy way. Like, I feel you. If my boss will give me an answer and I have a problem and my boss would always be on Slack and within a few minutes would tell me what to do, I'd be like, yeah, why try to figure this out myself and then maybe be wrong on my boss saying that went sideways, right? Why not just ask my boss? Easy and good. But so it took about 2 weeks for the team to recognize, okay, this change is for real. And he's very serious and he's very disciplined with this, which then makes it mean I need to change something about how I run my work how much I rely on him, but also I might just have to dare to do things differently. And the manager, the person that I worked with, had to really create that safe space for people to make mistakes and do it their way. And he had to get really good at monitoring his reaction, even if someone did it very different than he would have done it. Throughout, I want to say this was probably like a 4 to 6 week process. His time management issue was completely gone. There was no time management issue. In fact, he would go for hours on a day thinking, what is my team doing? Why is no one reaching out to me? And he finally had the time to really focus on the deeper analytical things. He would look at statistics. He'd be able to prepare for meetings with the team. He was able to look at where do we have gaps in the process. He would be able to initiate those initiatives with other departments. And his ability to influence and to create on a result on a higher level, he was operating a completely different level. It changed dramatically for him. But it all started with the behaviors that he instilled, these patterns that made him feel so important and relevant. And he thought he was doing a good job and he was being a servant leader, but at all created that sort of the vicious cycle.
So a couple of things come up for me. I'm kind of trying to access myself, when I was in my first leadership role. And it kind of makes me smile a little bit. But I think a couple of things that I heard from you is 4 to 6 weeks was kind of the transition for that shift to occur, which kind of surprises me, seems to me as a very quick shift, a relatively quick shift. And what I'd love for you to give sort of more color to or more detail to is, I think someone could hear that as, oh, you've totally changed someone's personality in 4 to 6 weeks. Is that what happened?
Yeah, no, let me be really clear. The shift from once we have identified the problem, once he identified, okay, here's the game plan, and we worked on this together, like how is he going to manage the different things that distract him from actually doing the work or running the day he wanted to? How's he going to handle that? How is he going to communicate with his team? All that is prep work, right? Then the day one's the Monday is like, okay, I'm communicating the changes and I'm going to stick with this. And this is going to mean like 2 weeks of discomfort because you know what? He really wanted to help them. It's a behavioral change. Those things are not easy. Then the team started to adapt, and it took about 4 to 6 weeks for this all to fall into place where it felt like, oh, this is the new normal. This is just how we work here. This is how you communicate with me, and here's how I run my days. To fall into that new routine took about 4 to 6 weeks. From then on, all his effort into these other projects, that's a month-long project. Okay. For someone to look at it from the outside, this is probably a 6-month transformation, if not even a 12-month transformation. This is really important to know. These things don't happen overnight. Yeah, they're very intentional though, but they have a huge, the huge shift in someone's ability to lead and rise through the ranks.
So something I'd like to try on you, and just kind of get sort of stream of consciousness, get your thoughts here. That servant leadership idea, it's never really quite sat well with me. I mean, I think I understand the spirit of it, but maybe just the word servant in it, I don't like so much. And I've been experimenting with this, and I'm saying if this kind of aligns with or is congruent with the way you think. I started thinking of this idea of invitational leadership. I want to get to an end point. And I kind of say to them, hey, look, I think we both want to kind of get there. Do you want to come with me? And why I'm going and why you're going are two different reasons. We're just standing at a similar endpoint. I think it's kind of the superhero versus the Yoda, right? The Yoda is saying, hey, I think we all need to go do this. You kind of do your piece and I'll do my piece and we'll get there together. And that's a winning team. How does that sit with you? Is there any elements of that sort of resonate with you?
That's interesting. Invitational leadership. Yeah, I like the idea of at the end of the day, we can't force people. And we've seen that all over the last few years, more so than we've ever had. And we see this now with all the trends around quiet quitting, right? Even if they have a contractual obligation, we really can't force them to do anything.
That's right.
So, but if we create a bigger why and a purpose, and we make work for people is a way to gain that significance that humans thrive for. It is a way to contribute. Yeah. It's a way to be part of something bigger. then we want to do this. And when we want to do this, we accept the invitation. Yeah. And my purpose or my why fits within your why.
Yeah, that's right. Or alongside, or or whatever the analogy is there, right? And I've had this saying that I've used, and I'd love to try this on you as well. And it's this idea that I say I can pay people for their minds, but if I get their hearts, I win. And I think that kind of aligns with the way you think of things, right? And so, sort of in that same model, um, nobody gets out of bed for somebody else. They get out of bed for themselves, their own purposes, right? I get out of bed for my 3 kids and my wife and my lifestyle and my family. No leader can pay me enough to get out of bed, maybe for a couple of weeks, but at some point in time, I'm tired of it. I'm getting out of it because I get to take my kids to get some ice cream. I help kids a lot today. I've noticed that. But the point is that there's a deeper purpose that each individual has. And if as a leader, you can influence them to see how their purpose aligns with the purpose you're trying to do together, that's a win-win. Is it not?
Yeah. Sorry, cut this out, but it's almost going to sneeze. Just I was like, wait, pause.
Perfect timing on my part.
Yeah. And actually, I agree with you. And I would even say, even money doesn't pay for the mind, right? So there's the bare minimum that people put in. We know this now, right? We've known this for years. Someone who not just executes based on direction, but actually thinks alongside, they have to have their heart in it.
Yeah, that's right.
They have to. And that's when the mind really comes to life. And when people start to problem solve, take ownership, they're creative, they're innovative. We're not innovative or creative for the sake of money.
Yeah, that's right. It's funny, as part of my recruiting practice, whenever I hire people, I start this out, and I know there's a little bit of a shock when people say it because of the way they respond. I say, hey, thanks for getting on Skype or Zoom or whatever it is. I say, hey, thanks for getting on. I want to be clear with you. I'm not interviewing you for this job. I'm interviewing for the next company that I run. And they go, wait, what? I said, because if I'm not serving you well enough in this company, you're not going to come to me to the next place that I go to. And it completely shifts the perspective of the conversation in terms of, I'm not looking for you to be here for next month or the week after that or after that. I'm talking about 8 years from now. I'm going to start a company. I'm going to say, hey, Jack, Sally, whatever, I'm about to start a company. Before I finish the sentence, they're like, I'm on board. Right. And that's the kind of buy-in you want from your people. And I think I think what you're kind of talking about is helping people shift to that mindset where they're getting that buy-in from people, not from here, but from here. Does that sound right?
Yeah, totally. And there's this thing about whoever says like, I'm a leader, and leader management, we've had this conversation before, right? It's like the title, but really if we go down to the heart conversation, it's not the leader who makes himself a leader or themselves a leader. It is the followers in that sense, or the employees that buy into their ideas and want to be part of their teams, that have to say, yes, Vinay is my leader. Those are the people who have to say it. It can't be self-declared.
Yeah, that's right. I've always said in networking, the best conversations to be part of in networking are the ones where I'm not part of the conversation, right? When I walk out of the room and they're like, I really like that guy. I'd like to find some way to do work with that guy, right? And they pull my card out and look at it again. I think you're kind of saying the same thing with your people, right? You want them to say, gosh, this person gives me so much space to become better. I can't wait to get here tomorrow. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, is that possible?
And I want to know where they're going after this, because I'm going to follow along like that. I've realized that I can I can realize my own potential while in their presence.
Yeah. Wow. When someone builds a space for you to expand your own, I think of this as opposed to growth mindset. I think a growth mindset is sort of an internal thing, right? Expansive mindset is outside of yourself. When you can start to build an expansive mindset and say, hey, why don't you all come along with me? Let me invite you to, I'm going to this place. You want to come with me?
Totally. Right? And there's another anecdote here. There's a forum, there's an online forum. The question was asked, it's for professional, for young professionals. The question was asked, who was your best boss and why? And, some other person asked this about their best manager, and a bunch of people chimed in and gave their comments. And of course, I was like a hawk. I'm like, great question. I want to know the answers of what are they saying. And what's so fascinating is that from all the people who answered, the big theme, the big red thread throughout it all was I was trusted more so than by anyone else. I felt this person had more confidence in me than I had confidence in myself. And I was challenged and learned more than anywhere else.
Yeah.
I thought it was, spot on.
Yeah.
So it's these things. And those are when you talked earlier about someone's personality changing. Yeah, it's, it is about growing as a person to be able to get to the place where the people around you feel more confident, feel challenged. They keep learning, but they also have an outlook of where this could go. And they see a career trajectory, with you or alongside you. They feel like they're being trusted and they can trust you, and there's a safe space to fail and to say something that seems stupid, or to be vulnerable about challenges that are going on in their lives.
Yeah, I heard I know you've got quite a few followers on LinkedIn, and I'm active on LinkedIn as well. I heard a quote the other day that said, a winner is a loser who decided to try again, right? And if as a leader you can give people the space to have that opportunity, the velocity to fail, so that they can pick themselves up, dust themselves off, and then start to succeed. They did that on your watch. I think that makes you a more effective leader at that point, right?
Yeah.
And there may be a period of sort of that failure that's always got to occur, right? Becoming the 13-year-old soccer player. I was a terrible 13-year-old soccer player after my 12th birthday, right? But eventually I went down and started to rise up. Does that resonate?
Yeah, totally.
We've time has flown by. I know you've shared a story, you've shared a couple of nuggets. I'd love to understand if there are kind of like a takeaway message for someone to understand kind of where they are, sort of having some challenges. So how they could actually reach out to you, for example, how to recognize that they need help. What questions would you have them ask of themselves?
Yeah. So in all the work that I do around leadership development, I focus on 3 pillars. I call this the APS method for leadership development. A stands for awareness, P stands for principles, and S stands for system. So to identify if this is an area that you feel like you could really benefit from doing some work on, is 1, if you haven't invested time in developing your self-awareness and investigating in how other people work. So developing awareness of others, upwards, sideways, downwards, in terms of hierarchical structure. If you haven't spent time, carved out time, being intentional about learning about others and learning about yourself, that's sign number 1. Sign number 2, talking about P for principles. If you are not clear what your leadership principles are, you feel like you're shooting by the hips and you're reactive to everything around you, or you're trying to meet expectations of someone else in the organization, that you still feel like, but that thing doesn't sit well with you. Like you said earlier, about that whole servant leadership just doesn't sit well. If you're not clear of who you are as a leader and how you want to lead, it's likely that you're being perceived as somewhat unpredictable or inconsistent. And it usually also doesn't feel good. Like then we're just a little bit out of alignment with our inner, compass and values and all that. So developing your leadership principles would be number 2. If you're not there, you don't know what there are for you, that would be flag number 2. And then the third one is the leadership system. If you don't know how you're running performance reviews, the framework for giving feedback or navigating conflict, how you delegate and specific language around delegation, if you don't have your one-on-ones in place, you don't, sort of every time a new team member joins, you're trying to figure out how to onboard them, all those routine things and behaviors that make up someone's system, if that is not in place and not thought through, then that would be flag number 3.
So this is really interesting. There's a fact that came to mind. I heard a couple of months ago, and said that the average Olympic athlete has 11 coaches.
Yeah.
So what came to mind, and as soon as I heard that, I started to think to myself, why don't I have 11 coaches? I want to be world class. And I think what I'm hearing here is, I think you've just basically broken it down into this APS method: awareness, principles, and system. If there are challenges that you have here, I mean, it's kind of a compelling call to action, saying if you want to be world class, I think you ought to pick up the phone and call Ramona to become a better leader. at least as one of those coaches to kind of increase your just starting with that awareness of where
Yeah.
you are, right?
100%.
Well, Ramona, I did want to say thank you so much. This was I always learn so much from these conversations. As much as I like to believe I understand things, every conversation I have just adds another layer of level of polish on top of it. So in that
Yeah, same
regard,
here. Same here.
I
Enjoy the conversation with
really,
you.
yeah, I enjoyed this quite a bit. And for all those who listen in, thank you for listening in. Love to hear your comments, thoughts, things that you agree or disagree with. Feel free. This is about getting clarity in opinion, not being right or wrong. Chime in. I'd love to hear your comments. But thank you for listening. Thank you, Ramona.
Thank you, Vinay.